If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, but you want to do your part. And chances are you've heard me mention a great means by doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out fidei.email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course, they're Catholic. And they're offering 2 months off on your first year for an annual subscription if you enter the coupon code Return to Tradition without spaces. That's the name of this channel, without spaces, at checkout. One of the undeniable marks of the modernist crisis in the church today is the absolute disdain the modernists have for Catholicism itself and for the church that Jesus Christ established on the Rock of Peter. They really don't like the church much. They have admitted to a wild theory, basically, that is very similar to a rather wild theory that Protestants have, or at least some do, about the church. Some Protestants admit the historical evidence that the Catholic Church was founded by Jesus Christ on the Rock of Peter. What they say is that almost immediately, maybe within a century or so, after the passing of the last apostle, that the Catholic Church defected, that it essentially left the faith and adopted novelties, no later than the time Constantine made the faith legal. And then that for over 1,000 years, the Christian faith was in the hands of idolaters and the rest of it. They call this generally the Babylonian captivity. The modernists admit to something similar. They say early on the church was a welcoming, synodal, dialoguing and accompanying, non-judgmental church, and that somewhere afterwards the church became rigid and functionally lost the faith, and that now we are lucky that at Vatican II we have the church restored, and they are finishing the job of restoring the church. The two theories are very, very similar. They both rely on the idea that Jesus Christ is very lucky to have these men to fix his church for him, that apparently he did an insufficient job of establishing his church. It's based on utter contempt for the actual faith. And we see this here in the aftermath of the Synod on Synodality. Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich, the Relator General of the Synod, one of the two men running the Synod, basically, who is actually now papabile, meaning he could become pope because of the stature he gained running the Synod. He gave an interview recently to Vatican News, the official news arm of the Vatican. Think the BBC of the Vatican, okay? Or the NPR of the Vatican. He gave an interview to them, and he was asked a series of questions, and it shows dripping with contempt for actual Catholicism. His answers do. So we're going to turn to Vatican News so you get an idea of what it is they're doing, and I'm going to counter what he says with just some quotes from a saint that I quote quite often on this channel, St. Vincent of Lerins. So we go to Vatican News with this headline. Cardinal Hollerich on Synod. Catholics will see a church where they count. Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich, the Synod's general rapporteur, speaks to Vatican News following the closing conference of the second session of the 16th Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod on Synodality, and observes how the Synod's fruits can impact and empower the daily lives of Catholics worldwide. I don't know why he keeps invoking the Jesuits there when he starts talking about the fruits of the Synod, but I digress. The laity, though, in this calculation, do not count in the Church of Christ established on the Rock of Peter. That is what his view is. That's the only thing I can think of when I see a cardinal say that the laity don't count in the church. The laity have always counted. It's just that the church has been hierarchical in nature until now. I say until now because it is, when you dissect the new document from the Synod, it becomes very clear that what you see is the decentralization scheme unfolding. That's the goal. They're just slow rolling it because they can't just impose it overnight on the church, because if they do it, the laity will freak out, as we should. But they have nothing but contempt for Catholicism when they say the laity don't count in the Catholic Church. It's absolute contempt. It's where most of the saints came from. It's where all of your vocations come from. The laity do count for something. Hollerich here admits that the Synod is offering the church novelty. Here, this is where St. Vincent of Lerins comes to mind. He wrote a book called The Comminatory. I have it featured in full on this channel in small portions. It took a year to do it because Pope Francis was invoking St. Vincent of Lerins as an excuse to impose novelty on the church, when that work by St. Vincent of Lerins clearly condemns novelty. Here's what Cardinal Hollerich had to say, and then we'll bring in St. Vincent of Lerins at the end. From the article, quote, "Your Eminence, what novelty does this synod offer?" To which he responds, "The novelty is that the synod is a process. The synod started in 2021, and in fact the Synod of Bishops of 2023 and 2024 were just the celebration phase of that process. Now we give the discernment to the Holy Father who has to continue it, and the Holy Father has given it, in a certain sense of the whole Church, to the local communities. So the process continues even if this 16th General Assembly, the Synod of Bishops, is finished." To which he asks, what impact does the Synod have for normal Catholics in their everyday lives? His response, they will probably not see a change immediately because changes need time, and the Holy Spirit needs time because he has to convert our hearts. That normally takes time because we put resistance. But they will see with time a church where they count, where they are important, where their talents, their gifts, their life experience are important because they belong to the people of the baptized. They belong to the holy people of God, and by their baptism and confirmation, they have received a mission. And this mission, we fulfill it together as a church, local community, small community, parish, diocese, and beyond. To which he is asked, anything else you'd like to add, Your Eminence? He responds, for me it was a joy and honor to be able to participate in this synod, and I wish everybody could do the positive experience I have done of synodality. End quote. We don't count in the Catholic Church as it exists. Apparently Jesus made a mistake there too, not making the church inclusive enough for the modernists in Rome. And looming over all this is, of course, the giant figure of St. Vincent of Lerins, Doctor of the Church, who warned the faithful repeatedly, all the way back in the 4th century, against novelty. He was talking about the followers of the heretic Arius, who, it was the big crisis of the time. Every crisis of heresy, including like the Protestant so-called Reformation and everything else afterwards, was compared to Arius. And Arius was considered the worst. You don't see too many followers of Arius anymore, although, frankly, a lot of Protestant groups basically are followers of Arius because they repeat his same errors. But he was talking about them. But his words here, he had a broad enough view to understand that Arius would come and go, but there would be future enemies of the church that would need to be contended with, and that they all would have one thing in common. They would all promote novelty, every single one of them. Here is what he has to say on novelty. Quote, true piety admits no other rule than that whatsoever things have been faithfully received from our fathers, the same are to be faithfully consigned to our children, and that it is our duty not to lead religion whither we would, but rather to follow religion whither it leads. And that is the part of Christian modesty and gravity, not to hand down our own beliefs or observances to those who come after us, but to preserve and keep what we have received from those who went before us. End quote. He also says, both of these coming from his work, The Commentatory, quote, what then shall a Catholic Christian do, if some novel contagion attempt to infect no longer a small part of the church alone, but the whole church alike? He shall then see to it that he cleave unto antiquity, which is now utterly incapable of being seduced by any craft or novelty. End quote. That sounds like an endorsement of resisting the authorities in Rome, even if they themselves are responsible for promoting novelty. And it certainly is an endorsement of resisting the heresies of Hollerich and this synod on synodality that is thankfully behind us, at least for now, because the working groups meet next year, and they're going to give us in the spring some hot takes on how to change the church to be more hip and cool with the times. And given that we are about to enter a Jubilee year of mercy, be on your guard, because the changes they want to impose on the church have always been wrapped up in the language of mercy. Francis always wraps up his errors in the language of mercy. He just does. And this is probably going to be something along those lines. After all, it's just too good of an opportunity to pass up. But how do you feel now, knowing that the church will finally be a place where you count? That apparently Jesus made that mistake 2,000 years ago, making laity not count in the church. And that the modernists are so lucky to have Hollerich and Gresh and James Martin and Francis and the rest of them. Man, to fix his mistakes. How does that make you feel? Let me know what you think in the comments, since feelings are the things that are important now, if you've been paying attention to synodality and how it works. Share with me in the comments your synodal insights from your personal lived experiences about how it feels to be a traditionally minded Catholic, to finally be welcome and counted in the Church. Oh wait, traditionalists need not apply. After all, Traditionis Custodes pushes us to the margins of ecclesiastical society. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And, as always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.